Hi, my name is Maggie, and I want to tell you about how Jesus changed my life. I was born and raised in a Christian household. My two amazing parents have been together for over 22, 24 years. I can't even keep track anymore. They raised me and my two younger siblings with Christian ideals, and we were very heavily involved in the church. I grew up leading and serving in children's ministry, preschool ministry, special needs, production, worship team, you name it, I was there. My parents also homeschooled me and my younger two siblings, and in true homeschool fashion, I was 7 years old and I was playing a video game, but homeschoolers, Christian homeschoolers especially, don't play just any video games. We play Bible-based video games, and so that sounds so stereotypical, but it really was actually a really fun video game, and I would honestly love to play it again. But anyway, it went through different Bible stories, and I remember when I was 7, there was one I was playing, and it was the story of Jesus and Nicodemus, and that is still to this day one of my favorite stories because Jesus really explains things while also not explaining things. He is talking about being born again, and Nicodemus is all confused, which, honestly, same. But he's talking about being born again, and Nicodemus is like, bro, what? And Jesus is like, not born like come out of your mom's womb, born again into the Spirit. And I love that story so much, mostly because that day, listening to Jesus explain that in the video game, everything just clicked for me. Everything my parents had been trying to teach me just clicked. And I knew that Jesus was telling the truth in the story in the Bible, and that he really did exist, that he really did die. And I understood finally the reason why he had to die was for my sins, and I needed to repent and be saved. And so that night I prayed with my mom and asked Jesus into my heart, and ever since then my life has not been the same. But things didn't change right away. I was always trying to be a good kid. Actually, it was something that I really struggled with growing up. I was always the quote unquote perfect kid, and honestly kind of got made fun of for it. I always knew the answers in Sunday school. I was always like a perfectionist. I was the mom of every friend group I was in, and that kind of made me feel like I couldn't be anything else. Everybody expected me to be perfect, and so if I ever wasn't perfect or I ever wasn't okay, I felt like I couldn't really talk about it because people weren't going to take it seriously. That leads me to high school, or actually right before high school. I was in 8th grade and I was starting to like guys. Well, I guess I started to like guys way before that, but 8th grade was, I guess, when it really got serious. I had always struggled with finding my worth in what people thought of me, and at this age especially, it was in what guys thought of me. So 8th grade rolls around and I have a major crush on this guy, and of course he doesn't like me back, and that's okay. But at the time it was not okay to 8th grade Maggie, and I took it really, really hard, and I ended up having my first panic attack. That was the first time I felt completely and totally alone in my life. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what was happening in my body. I just felt this overwhelming sense of panic and stress and worry and anxiety and worthlessness. And finally, my body settled down, but my mind was still going. And thankfully, I had some friends around me who had experienced panic attacks before, and they kind of knew how to calm me down and talk me through it. But this went on for the majority of high school for me. I moved on from that guy, but I moved on to another guy, and I ended up liking this guy for a lot longer, and went back and forth of he likes me, he doesn't like me, he likes me, he doesn't like me. And every time it would fluctuate on how I felt about myself. And if I had a day or a month or whatever where I felt like he didn't care anything about me, well, then that made me feel like I didn't matter and that I was worth nothing. And I know it sounds so silly, but you got the hormones going, and it's just a lot of emotions, and it's not a fun time. And having panic attacks and major anxiety on top of that was so much worse. And I remembered one day that I had prayed when I was in middle school, I think. I had prayed because I felt like I didn't have a good testimony, a good Christian testimony, where I didn't have this story where God had majorly changed my life in some way. But I remember praying for God to give me a crazy testimony for God to let something bad happen in my life, which is like the worst prayer to pray. So please don't pray that prayer because I realized that he had let that happen, that, you know, those panic attacks and the insane, like, dark place that I had been in, that was gonna be my testimony. And I kind of hated myself for it because I was like, why did I ask for this? And I probably did blame God for a little while. And I was like, Lord, I don't know why you're letting this happen to me. I don't know why it won't go away. I don't know how to fix it. When I was in 10th grade, I distinctly remember, like, I was mowing the grass out in my backyard, and I had this feeling that I'd never had before, and it was just hatred. And it wasn't hatred for anybody else. It was hatred for myself. I really genuinely hated myself in that moment, and that thought scared me. And that wasn't the only time I had that thought. I had it a few more times until eventually it led me to a place where I was thinking about ending it. And there was one night after church, ironically, I'd been serving on production team. I went home and I just couldn't sleep. I was laying in my bed, running through all these rejections that I'd had and just beating myself up and thinking about everything I'd said wrong or did wrong that night and how everybody must be judging me and all these things that were not true. And the enemy was just really getting to me. The devil was putting all these thoughts in my head, and I was laying in bed and I felt like I weighed 1,000,000 pounds. I couldn't move, thankfully, because if I could move, I knew that I would get up and find something to end my life. And in that moment, I just looked up at the ceiling and I saw Jesus looking at me. And I don't remember much beyond that, honestly. I just remember knowing in that moment that he was real, that he is real, and that he was there with me, and that he loved me, and that he forgave me, and that he was going to hold my hand and help me to get better, and that he still wanted me to be here. And after that moment, I want to say that I never doubted that he was real again. But, you know, honestly, every true Christian has doubts at some point, and I've had moments again since then where I've just wrestled with him, and that's not the end of my testimony. I know it's not. There's other things I've been through, but that was probably the most life-changing thing I had been through, was when I realized in that moment that he was so real and that he was so there, and that changed my life forever. I went to counseling that summer to work on my anxiety and my panic attacks. And I want to say that, like, that's what got me through it, and that's what helped me to stop having panic attacks. But honestly, it was like a light switch. I can't explain it by anything else but a miracle that Jesus miraculously took that burden away from me. After that, I had one more panic attack in September. And then since then, I went 2 years without having, honestly, more than 2 years without having one. And now I only have one when I'm, like, genuinely freaked out in a situation. You know, my emotions will still take over, but I haven't had one due to that. And I want to say that that's where me placing my worth in what other people thought of me ended, but it didn't. I still struggle with it a little bit. It's gotten a lot better, praise be to the Lord, but I do still struggle sometimes. I'm in a happy relationship now with a man who loves me like the Lord loves the church, and he pushes me closer to Jesus every day, and he takes care of my heart, and I could not be more grateful for him. But there are still days when I put my worth in what he thinks of me and what he's doing, and it's still a lot, and it's still something I'm working through, but I know the Lord is there working through it with me. And I love watching what he does in my life, because while it doesn't always make sense, and it might not ever make sense on this side of heaven, I know that he's there with me through it all, and that he is real. I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So my question to you is, do you know that Jesus is real? Have you ever experienced him? And if not, I challenge you to think about if maybe it's because you're closing yourself off to him and you're trying not to experience him. But I promise you, if you open yourself up to it and you look for Jesus and you let him reveal himself to you, he will change your life forever in the best possible way.